Thank you for joining me for this presentation on 5 surprising facts to transform your presentations. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm recording this on the traditional, ancestral, stolen lands of the Coast Salish people here in North Vancouver, BC. It's particularly the lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh, and I am incredibly grateful to be able to live, work, and play on the lands that they have shepherded for thousands of years. Over the years, I have seen many presentations where the person presenting knew a tremendous amount and thought that the best thing they could do was to dump their information all over their audience. So I want you to think to yourself, have you seen a presentation like that? This one's definitely just for you. Have you done a presentation like that? I have. It was around 30 years ago. I was at a university campus in downtown Vancouver. It had a raised classroom like this, except unlike this, it was filled with a sea of securities industry professionals. At that time, I was a very good transactional lawyer, which meant I drafted documents. I did not do presentations to groups. And one day, my boss walked into my office and she said, "You wrote this policy. You need to go talk to our industry about it." And I went, "Blah! I don't do that." Well, not out loud, because she was my boss. And of course, there I was standing at the foot of that classroom filled with all the seats filled. I was terrified and I was terrible. I had no idea how to give a presentation that would be memorable and engaging and have the important information included. Instead, I walked through the policy I had drafted. Section 1 of the policy says, Section 2 of the policy says, Section 25.3 of the policy says, and as I droned on and on about my policy, my audience was completely disengaged. Some of them were sleeping, some of them were talking to each other about lunch, but no one was paying any attention to me. I felt devastated. I thought that people would think I wasn't a real lawyer. I mean, I was a good lawyer, but lawyers are supposed to be eloquent presenters, and I clearly had not been that. So when I went back to the office and a Toastmasters club started, I joined it almost right away. And that got me over the terror of public speaking, and I became what I would call Confident Brenda. And I gave presentations that are very common for lawyers, accountants, engineers, tech people. They went something like this. I shared slides that just had text. I shared facts, and then more text and facts and more text and facts. And as I got better, the text came in as I spoke about the facts, and I thought that was pretty impressive. The problem was that I knew I was not connecting with my audience. It was about 9 years ago or so when everything changed. And I learned how people learn, the brain science behind how people learn and remember. And I used that when I was helping my colleagues at the BC Securities Commission, lawyers, accountants, engineers, give much better presentations. In 2018, I retired from the BC Securities Commission and I started my own business, Memorable Presenter Consulting. You may be wondering why I would start a business after I'd already retired and at the age of 61. The reason I started my business is I believe that everybody can be memorable and engaging. It doesn't matter how dry or technical the information that you have to convey is. What it takes are the right tools, and I'm going to share some tools with you today. The right attitude, that is a willingness to get better at your presentations, and then practice, practice, practice. So you can think about what mistakes you've seen in presentations that you've attended. Things that I've heard when I ask this, when I have a live audience, things I've heard are people reading from their slides, people having far too much text on their slides, people with a monotone voice, people droning on and on and on and on and on and on and on about their facts. Any of those, you may have seen other things. Now, I have shared a handout with you. It is in the comments on this video. You can download it from there. And that handout is important because it is a wonderful aid memoir. You can fill in the handout as we go, and I'll have very brief stops in this video for you to do that, but you can, of course, just hit pause and restart after you've filled it in. Indeed, you're in a better position because you can go back and listen again if you missed something. So in the next 25 minutes or so, I am going to share with you three things. One, the 5 surprising facts. Secondly, the brain science behind those facts. And finally, 3 tools that will help enhance your presentations. So first, the surprising facts. Fact number 1 is that information does not persuade. Fact number 2 is that stories enhance learning. Fact number 3 is that if you have no images, people will learn and remember less. Fact number 4, if you only have words on your slides, people will learn and remember less. And finally, if you only have data on your slides, people will learn and remember less. So that brings us to the handout for surprising facts. And this is where you would pause the video to fill in the handout before continuing. So that brings us to the brain science to support those facts. So as I said, information does not persuade. Why is that? Well, the main reason is something called confirmation bias. And what that says is that if you have a strongly held position and someone provides you with facts to contradict that position, you are likely to not see or hear it. And if you do see or hear those contradictory facts, you are almost certain to discount them. But why do we do this? Well, that was looked at in a study done of the US presidential election in 2004. The researchers got an equal number of strong Republicans and strong Democrats and hooked them up to functional magnetic resonance imaging machines, or fMRIs. And then they showed the participants self-contradictory statements by their preferred candidate, George W. Bush for the Republicans and John Kerry for the Democrats. And they looked at what part of the brain was active as they were looking at these self-contradictory statements. The reasoning part of the brains didn't light up at all. What lit up were the emotional circuits in the brain. And when they had figured out how to make those self-contradictory statements support their preferred candidate, it was the pleasure part of the brain that lit up, massively reinforcing their original position. So just providing a whole bunch of facts will not be useful in persuading people, and people will not learn or remember what you're trying to teach them or what you're trying to share with them. So that brings us to the second bit of brain science, which is that stories enhance learning. Why is this? Well, I learned about this from Kendra Hall, who is a professional storyteller, and she spoke at the Toastmasters International Convention here in Vancouver in 2017. And she shared 4 reasons why stories enhance learning by connecting you with your audience. I'm going to share one of those reasons with you in the interests of time. And that is that stories have an effect on the brains of your audience members, the people who are listening to you. And there's 2 impacts. One, there is a slight blip in cortisol, which is the focus and attention hormone. And there is an increase in oxytocin, which is the trust and connection hormone. So if you can use stories, people will be focused on you, they'll be paying attention to you, they'll trust you, and they'll feel connected to you. And then they are much more likely to learn and remember what you are sharing. So that brings us to our final bit of brain science, which relates to slides. And I said that the more text and data you have on your slides, the less that is learned and remembered. I also said no images mean less learned and remembered as well. Why is that? Well, that is because of our limited working memory. Now, working memory is where everything goes, whether it comes in through your eyes or your ears or your nose or your taste or your touch, however it gets in, it goes to your working memory, and that is a limited resource. And I learned about this from the cognitive load theory of John Sweller. Now, what Sweller said is that we need to limit the amount of working memory that's filled up with the how we present to ensure that there is room for the what we are presenting. And I like to think of our working memory like this wooden grocery box. You take it to the store, but you're really, really hungry and you fill it up to the very, very, very top with pop and candy and chips and all sorts of junk food. And then you remember you're there for your week's worth of groceries. So you go out into the store and you bring back protein and fruits and vegetables and you try to put them into the box. But you can't because the box is already full and that good food just rolls away. The junk food that you filled your box up with was the how you present, in Sweller's terms, and the good food that couldn't fit in is the important information you are there to share, the what you present. Now, coming out of Sweller's work was work by Richard E. Mayer, and he came up with 12 principles of multimedia learning. And the 3 specific things I shared about slides come from those 12 principles. So that brings us to the handout on brain science. So you can pause the video here, fill that in, replay if you need to, and then we'll keep going because that brings us, well, it would bring us to questions. I should have gotten rid of that slide, but rather it brings us to tools. And I have 3 tools to share with you which will enhance your presentations. The first is to start with a challenging story that is relevant to what you are talking about. Tool number 2 is to include an image and title on every slide. Tool number 3 is to include a maximum of 3 bullet points of 1 to 3 words. So you can think now about tools you have used to engage your audience. This is the time for you to pause it for handouts. So I will keep going. Imagine if every time you present, your audience is on your every word, and they remember your key information for weeks or months after you speak. And to the extent it's relevant, they apply your information to their business or their life. Imagine. I believe that you can be an informative presenter who is engaging and memorable. And as I said, all it takes are some tools, and I've shared 3 tools with you. It takes a willingness to improve, and for that, I offer a free 45-minute amp up session, which is not about electricity. Rather, it is a facilitated self-assessment of the memorability of your presenting. As I help individuals from beginners like Victoria on the one side to Veronica, who's an extremely experienced presenter, but said that I had helped her with her presentation. I also help teams and organizations, And I offer, with a colleague who's an awesome graphic designer and knows things in PowerPoint that I don't, a professional slides solution. As Warren Buffett said to the graduating class of Columbia University in 2009, you can improve your value by 50% by improving your communication skills, your public speaking. I'd like to thank you for watching this recording. If you're interested in the live webinar, I host them once a month on Mondays at 3:30 and Thursday it's at 8 a.m. Both of those are Pacific time. And you can reach me at memorablepresenter.ca or Brenda at memorablepresenter.ca. Thanks so much for watching this video.